That's where all the seats go tonight?
Yes. The final prize is a copy of Explorers, which Joe Dante is going to personally autograph for you.
Maybe I'll recut it while you're at it.
All right. 454384. They deliberately make the boxes in Punch Media. All right, so I figure we'll just go ahead and open it up to you guys, unless you have any sort of opening thoughts.
Opening thoughts? Well, this isn't a movie I usually appear with. Because I guess I could say welcome to the rough cut of Explorers, because we were making this picture and the studio changed hands in the middle of production, and they decided that they needed this picture much quicker than we thought. And they said, well, you know, why don't you just stop now? And so we'd shot the picture under very hurried auspices. With the paint on the sets was literally wet, and when the kids stepped in the spaceship, they sunk into the cement because it wasn't dry. It was a very hurried movie, and the funny thing about it was that when I was first given the script, I was just coming off Gremlins, so for a rare point in my career, I was like, hey, let's get this guy. Paramount sent over the script, and they sent a reader to come and sit with me while I read it, and then take it with me, because it was very hush-hush. And apparently, Wolfgang Peterson was going to make the picture before I was, and he wanted to make it in Bavaria. And they had looked at Never-Ending Story, and I guess they decided they didn't want it to look like it was named Bavaria, because it's kind of a strange look. And it was set in America, so they said, oh, I'll get an American guy. So I sat and I read the script, and it was very entertaining, but it didn't have a third act. And I talked to them, and I said, well, you know, should we work on the script? We can work on the script while we're producing the picture, which, by the way, has become very commonplace now. And so we basically wrote the picture as we went along. Eric Luke was the writer. He's a good guy, and the first two-thirds of the script were great, but at the end, when the kids went to the planet, I hope I'm not wrong for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there's kids in it on a planet. And they, a spaceship, and they go and they play baseball, and they go home. That was the plot. And so it seemed like that wasn't quite enough. And so while we were making the picture, we were sort of improvising what we were going to do, and we came up with a sort of a pop culture angle on it that we thought would be funny, but audiences didn't particularly. And anyway, at a certain point, we just stopped editing. They said, just stop editing the picture, and we're going to put it out, and we got a perfect date for it. We know we can make a lot of money with it. So the date, it turned out to be the date of the Live Aid concert. And it opened the day of the Live Aid concert, where no one went to the movies. And it pretty much sank like a stone. And over the years, people have come up to me and they said, you know, I saw this picture when I was a kid. It's a very 80s movie. And I like it. I'm introducing my kids to it, and that's all been, you know, that's been great. But the problem is, for me, that the movie that you're going to see is not the movie that I wanted to make. It's the movie that I got to make up to a certain point and then had to stop. So there are some very nice things in it. There's a great score by Jerry Goldsmith. There's terrific effects by ILM, which I thought after Gremlins, I thought, good, I'll just do a small movie about little kids in a spaceship. It was so easy, and it was so complicated. And there's a great performance by Bob Picardo, who plays several aliens, and improvised a lot of his dialogue. And he's wearing this huge, giant suit that was created by Bob Bottin. And his performance is quite amazing in the film. And particularly, some of his ad-libs are absolutely brilliant. But what was interesting is we brought him back for looping, and he didn't have the costume on, and he couldn't get into the character again. Because he was sweating bullets, and this thing weighed a ton, and you know, one of the characters had this huge head. It was like wearing a typewriter. And Bob couldn't say, I can't do it. So much of my performance was actually desperation for being wrapped in this big suit. But it's, you know, and then the kids are great. I mean, Ethan Hawke, this is his first picture, and He wasn't even an actor. He came to the reading with another kid who was a friend of his who was an actor. And I just looked at him and I said, this kid is really cute. He had a huge mouthful of braces. But I said, let's see if he can act. And he read it, and he ended up doing a screen test, and he ended up getting the part, which is pretty astonishing. You know, I don't know if that kind of thing happens anymore. River Phoenix, who had done several other pictures, this was his first feature film. He'd done a lot of television. And he was a great guy, but he was exactly the opposite of the character that he plays in the movie. He plays this sort of nerdish computer geek, and he was actually, we originally thought of him for the third kid, the sort of battered child, and then we found another kid who was great for that, and we thought, River is so good, let's have him play this other part. And it was so funny because he would be on this set in Petaluma, and there were all these girls hanging around, and teenagers, and he was with this nerdy outfit and these little glasses, and so whenever girls came by, he would take the glasses off, and he was actually sort of like a little Clark Kent. And he was such a great kid, and they were all great. And the interesting thing about when you make a movie is the director and the sound guy have these earphones, and so in between takes, the kids are they're in this mock spaceship, and they're up on a big green screen, and they're stuck there, and they're there for maybe an hour, and so they just talk. And you could hear everything that they say. And after a while, the actors tend to forget that people can hear them. And what was really interesting to me was all the things that these kids talked about. And they were about 13. And I was far from 13. But they were the same things that I had talked about when I was a kid. And it just made me sort of realize how generational the whole thing is. How, no matter how times change, kids always have the same kind of certain fixations and problems, mainly around sex with their boys. And it was a lot of fun for me. I mean, it was really miserable making the movie, but the studio was just awful. But the experience with the actors and stuff was really swell. And the movie has a lot of nice things in it. And I don't mean to belittle it for people who like it. It's just when I look at it, it's hard for me to look at it because I know that it's not quite what I had in mind. But anyway, hope you like it.
Well, does anybody have any questions to make you revisit all the painful memories?
No, it's not that painful. It's wonderful. It's like a big scab.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
How close to the release date did they tell you to stop cutting and start scoring?
The picture was supposed to come out in August, or no, maybe at the very end of August, and they said they needed it for July 4th. And so we basically stopped working on it in May. I mean, we had to go, finish it with all the sound and stuff. And we had one preview where little tiny tots, kids, 7-year-old kids are dragging these big preview cards around. And the thing was that
they didn't like the measles.
we had the preview, but there was no point in having a preview because the reels were being printed already. There wasn't anything we could do except cut stuff. And we did cut a bunch of stuff. And I tried to find some of it recently, and it's long gone.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on some of the things, some of the big things you would have done differently?
It's not so much specific things that I would have done differently. I mean, certainly a lot of scenes are just not finished the way they should be. I mean, you'll see Mary Kay Place in the picture. She's got 2 shots, and she had a huge part as the mother. Lawrence Pressman had a part as the father. He's not in the movie at all. There's a scene where you see they're flying around the drive-in, and there's a kid in a car who says that looks so fake. And he actually used to be Ethan's brother in the movie. I mean, there was a whole family subplot that was completely missing. And then it was also supposed to be a slightly more cerebral movie. I mean, there was a theory that was around at the time about the world mind and about how everybody, there's a guy named Talahard Giordani. The only picture that they've ever mentioned anything about his work in is Exorcist 2, unfortunately. But it was a concept that I thought was interesting, and we started to get into it. And there was just no way to make any sense out of it every time we had it, so we just dumped all that stuff. And then you'll notice at the end of the movie, there's a scene by a tree, and they have some dialogue, the kids. It's completely relooped and has nothing to do with what they were originally talking about. And the big disappointment for me is the last 5 minutes of the movie are just completely not what they were supposed to be. And I tried to fix it a little bit on this DVD by putting back some of what we had cut, but a lot of the effects weren't finished, and so you couldn't do it. It's just one of those things. I mean, everybody's got one of these.